Space. There's no such thing as stability here. Our comm waves are littered with Freestar merchants reporting pirate and spacer raids. The frequency of these attacks are increasing. Merchant ships flying through Freestar trade lanes are dumping cargo just to survive. And many still don't make it. Folks in the Freestar Trade Commission are worried, and rightfully so. Colonies depend on those shipments, and when they don't show up, people suffer. With convoys a risk, and colonies waiting on supplies, we needed a ship that could respond fast to these threats. One more capable than the Star Eagle. We needed more firepower and more range. We needed a guaranteed outcome. That's why we gave the folks over at LEC a ring. The TFR-11 Star Raker, a planetary defense platform made for rangers like me, designed to patrol contested routes, gather recon, and respond fast when trouble sparks. She's got these brand new twin Hoffman sublights, fed by a TIG GDR565 Grav Reactor. That's plenty of power to get where we need to be. With vector clusters on articulated wings, she can slip through canyon runs, hug the deck, and drop through rough terrain where most ships won't even dare to land. When we're out running recon, we can't afford blind spots. The Star Raker's comms and sensor suite cut through the magnetic storms that blanket Narion and Valo. There ain't no static with this ship. But when the talking don't work, we resort to guns. Falconet missiles, hard-hitting and long range, enough to break a raider ship apart before it ever reaches you. Twin DLX Pulsar lasers, cycle fast, burn out shield system mid-flight. And when the hostiles are in range, dual 39mm rotary cannons. I've seen what they do. Let's just say you don't want to be on the receiving end of these. Star Rakers have a lower utility deck where we can detain prisoners, maintain our gear, and store our firearms. The main deck can accommodate up to 3 crew comfortably for long-range recon missions. For us Rangers, it's simple. You either make it back from patrol, or you become another name on the wall. And out on the frontier, that difference matters. With the Star Raker, we don't just patrol the lanes. We own them.
Alright shipwrights, welcome to another LEC build. After doing 3 UC ships in a row, I think it's time we go back to a Freestar build, but first, a bit of ship lore. With increased pirate and spacer attacks on Freestar merchant ships, regional defense authorities of the Narion and Valo systems, in tandem with the Freestar Trade Commission, voted to apply funding for a new patrol and recon ship to protect the trading lanes within Freestar Collective territory. LEC was selected to lead development in close partnership with the Antares group for propulsion systems. What resulted in the partnership was the TFR-11 Star Raker, a quick response planetary defense ship purpose-built for reconnaissance, patrol, and forward deployment in contested trading lanes. Now this kind of ship design has a bit of a traditional sci-fi shape, and it's one of my favorite ship profiles to build out. It's heavily inspired by the Anvil Carrack from Star Citizen, and that was the basis for both of my Meridian Star builds. You can essentially call the Star Raker a mini Meridian or a mini Carrack build. As far as pricing goes, this ship is going to cost roughly 925,000 credits, give or take, but you can cut this price down significantly by using Class A or Class B components, as well as choosing different weapons. The most expensive items for this ship are the TIG reactor and grav drive, along with the Matilia, lasers, and components. So if you swap these out for other components or weapons, you can probably cut around 150k to 200k tops. The main reason I'm coming back to this design style is because of the Antares Supplemental 1 mod by Deskel, which features new moving wing parts that articulate when taking off and landing. Moving parts in general are items that the shipbuilding community has been asking for since the game came out, so it's really cool to see these in action. Now keep in mind, this is a paid mod that costs 400 credits, but I do think it's well worth it to have access to all of these new articulating wing parts. And because this is a paid creation, those of you who use Nexus mods won't be able to build it exactly like this. I also incorporate some bad tech parts, which is also from a paid mod, but it's fairly easy to find replacement parts that you have access to, so you can build out the wings of the ship. And I'll be showing you 3 free alternatives when we get to that section. Just keep in mind, the wings will be static and they won't articulate. On another note, I know I've promised to tackle some very specific ship designs, or faction ships for some of you, and my apologies for the delay on those. I've just been having a lot of fun with these newer Antares parts, and so I kind of want to knock these out first before I start tackling some of those other ships. Also, you probably heard by now that No Man's Sky just received a major update that includes shipbuilding and decoration, and you can bet that I've been messing around with it. Now I plan to incorporate No Man's Sky builds into my regular upload schedule, but no worries, my main priority is still Starfield because it's really more my flavor of gaming, and it's still the better shipbuilding experience overall, in my opinion. So I'm gonna slot the No Man's Sky builds between Starfield uploads as much as I can. In case you missed it, I did upload a second No Man's Sky ship build last week, so feel free to check that out if you're interested. Things are also getting a bit delayed just because I had to start a new save since my last one was really starting to run into performance issues, especially with crashing and stuttering. The setup I have is very mid-tier, so I'm not running with the best specs, and paired with that older save, the performance issues were really becoming more apparent. But everything's good with this new save now. Last but not least, as far as the build process goes, it's fairly straightforward. Despite having a similar fuselage design with my last build, this one is much easier overall. Hab layout is also very straightforward, so decorating the interior is going to be easy with this one. But always remember, if you have any questions or you get stuck anywhere, feel free to reach out to me in the comments. Alright, if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I gotta say, I'm really enjoying figuring out how to incorporate the Antares wing parts into builds. I have one more Antares build to showcase for the next Starfield upload, and then I'm going to tackle some build requests, starting with another capital ship, and then the VCX-100 from Star Wars. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be adding new content to the channel in the form of No Man's Sky ship builds, but I'm still going to maintain the Starfield upload schedule with at least 2 guides a month, and I'm going to try to add at least 2 No Man's Sky builds a month as well. A few weeks ago, I also uploaded an interior decoration guide for ships, and every now and then, I would also like to mix in some ship-related content just like that. So that being said, I'm trying to plan out that next video because it takes a while to do, and I'm kind of struggling with picking which topic to cover next. So feel free to let me know what you would like to see in the comments. Some options on the table include a video where I just decorate an entire ship, or a guide on greebling techniques and parts. I'm also thinking about doing something like a best ship weapon guide or a best ship tab guide. All of these would include my recommended mods, just like the interior decorations guide, so let me know what you think, or if you have any better ideas, I am all ears. Last thing, I want to thank you all for the support and for watching the videos. The channel just hit 5k subs, and that is another milestone that I really don't take for granted. I think it's awesome to see how the shipbuilding communities, whether from Starfield or No Man's Sky, are so supportive of one another. I mean, we're all on the same page here, right? We all just want to build cool ships. So for you to take the time to watch my videos, I just really want to say thank you. As always, feel free to reach out to me in the comments if you have any questions or build requests, or if you just want to chat all things Starfield and No Man's Sky shipbuilding. This is Lindan, signing off. See you in the Starfield.